Hello and welcome to the OK Nerd Podcast. I'm Oscar.
And I'm Keegan, and this is the podcast where two friends talk about anything and everything nerd.
Yeah, so how's your evening going, Keegan?
It's going pretty good. You know, tonight we're recording the second episode. We finally got the first one out there, and I just want to say I appreciate anybody who's listened to the first episode, and if you haven't, just go check it out.
Yeah, so the first episode was kind of just a little introduction, kind of just talking about why we decided to do this podcast. But I'm actually excited about this one. I'm actually more excited about this one than I was like the first one, because we are actually going to talk about one of our favorite game studios.
Yeah, and it's actually one of the reasons why we even started this podcast to begin with, and that company is Sucker Punch Productions.
Yeah. I actually didn't really know who or the company's Sucker Punch at all, not until I ended up buying a PlayStation 3. And one of the games I bought so the PlayStation 3 that I got came with a bundle, and it came with like Batman Arkham Asylum and Infamous. And I saw Infamous.
I love that Infamous game.
Yeah, and I saw Infamous and I was like,
what is this?
Yeah,
it's like one of those giveaways that you think that you won't like and then you absolutely adore.
Exactly. So I play like Batman Arkham Asylum, and then I remember buying like another game, and I was playing that game, and Infamous was kind of just there like on the corner, like still in the package, and I was like, like I was kind of bored, and I was like, I guess I'll pop it in because it was free.
Because at that point in time, Infamous was like a PlayStation exclusive, and it still is too to this day. But yeah, because I remember that bundle.
Yeah, it was like their
I
new
think I had that
IP
bundle too.
Yeah, and I remember I popped it in, and it was like their logo just popped up on the screen like Sucker Punch, and I was like, who names their company Sucker Punch?
Yeah, and then you're just like, but then once you start getting into it and you realize like it's an actual superhero game, and you realize, okay, this is why they bundled it with Batman Arkham Asylum. But before we kind of go off on that, we're going to go off on a complete like almost history overhaul and talk about mainly all the main games and every game that Sucker Punch has made. And surprisingly, they haven't made a lot over the years, but a lot of the games you'll probably recognize. But before we get started, I wanted to kind of update after the last episode. So
tell us that story.
So in the last episode, I mentioned as a kid, you know, the whole Speed Racer toy thing that I was wanting to get from Hastings. So I told my mom about it, and my mom surprised me by sending in the mail, because she lives in Arkansas and I live in Texas, and I get this random package, and my fiance opens it up, and all of a sudden it's a Speed Racer and a Mach 5 Funko Pop. And as soon as I knew what that was, I knew she was the one that sent it, and she just told me that we're even now, and so I have no room to complain anymore. But I just thought everybody would want to hear that update.
Yeah, which it's actually a pretty, I guess, cute story, you know, when you think about it.
If you think about it, like going all the way back to elementary school, and so now that running joke now ends when I'm 25 years old.
Yeah, so it's, I don't know, I guess it's nice. Like it's nice when you think about it.
It was such a cool surprise. Yeah. Like I was not expecting it. It was super nice. And so right now, nobody can see it at home that's listening, but I literally have that Funko Pop right behind where me and Oscar are sitting recording the podcast in the basement. But you know, maybe one day the listeners will wind up getting to see all this once we kind of start getting the ball rolling on getting a few more listeners and everything like that.
Yeah, or we might start doing some videos. I don't know. I mean, the setup we have is pretty cool. I mean, we have a lot of like Funko Pops, a lot of Power Rangers stuff. Kind of just a lot of like anime, some Dragon Ball Z stuff, and some My Hero Academia stuff set up. So I don't know. Like, yeah, I would definitely want people to see that one day.
One
for
day.
Sure.
We'll get there, but
when we figure it out, like one thing at a time.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're literally crawling on doing the podcasting thing, so let alone adding the video aspect. I think we're doing pretty decent now.
Yeah, because we're not very tech savvy.
No,
we're not.
we're smart in learning, but not tech savvy at this point in time. This is probably
we're smart.
Oh no. What? No. You know what? I didn't graduate high school. No, I'm joking.
Yeah, no. Thank you for sharing with us
Yeah.
that story, Keegan. And I guess another update. You are engaged. I know that you said before you were like,
Yeah.
yeah, my girlfriend that's about to be my fiance. It's
Yeah.
like, well, he was already
I was
engaged,
already
so
engaged. It made it sound like I was planning some surprise thing. We've been engaged since December, but yeah, just to kind of get started on this, you want to lead it off, just kind of starting
well,
with the beginning.
yeah. You know, when I said earlier that I was like, who names a company Sucker Punch? A funny little I guess trivia
A
thing
little
is
fun
that
fact.
yeah, a little fun fact is that the founders of Sucker Punch, when they came up when they were trying to come up with names for the company, one of the co-founders he actually gave a list to his wife of all the games that I mean
Well,
not all the games
all the
yeah
ideas
all
and
the
stuff.
ideas and all the names that they had come up with, and apparently the wife of this co-founder said, well, as long as it's not Sucker Punch, because that one's like the stupidest one.
And then
And they
guess what
went,
they did?
yeah, and guess what they did? They named the company Sucker Punch.
And I don't blame them too, because it's just one of those things. Probably at the time they were just like, well, if my wife doesn't like it, more than likely it's gonna work. You know?
Right? It's one of those things. Yeah. It's like, hey, man, well, all right, you said not to, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do this. You told me
Yeah.
not to. I'm damn going for it.
Right. Yeah. So that's just a little fun fact, which is pretty cool. So Sucker Punch actually goes all the way back to the Nintendo 64 days. Yeah, I didn't
Which
even
is
know that.
super surprising because honestly, whenever I think of Sucker Punch, I think of Sly Cooper and the PS2, because
Yeah.
that was my first introduction to this company. And even though as a kid I didn't, you don't pay attention to companies like that, but when we were kind of looking into Sucker Punch and just kind of seeing what was going on with the company, since we love their games so much, surprisingly, their first game was for the Nintendo 64.
Yeah, it was called Rocket. Yeah, Rocket. I was gonna say Rocket Man, but
Yeah, no, it's like Rocket the Rolling Robot or something along those lines.
yeah, and it was actually one of the first 3D platformers on the Nintendo 64. I mean, I know
Along
that
with Mario 64, because at that time
exactly.
that was like the game.
Yeah, that
Any
that was the
game,
game.
any game that had that 3D platforming, anything that emulated Mario 64, just it did well. I
Yeah,
I had Mario 64, so and surprisingly, I probably rented or something Rocket at one point in time or the other.
yeah, and I mean it was every single like 3D platformer kind of followed the footsteps of Mario 64. I mean that was the game to like it set the standard. But another little, I mean, moving on through the history. After that, Sucker Punch decided to move over to PlayStation
Yeah.
because apparently, the
They had issues with, so back in the time of the Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation. So if you wanted to make a game for a specific console, you had to ask permission, and they would send you like
a development kit.
yeah,
Well, I think it's
development
still
kit.
like that today.
But back then it sounded like it was easy to get those from Nintendo for some weird reason. But then the co-founders and everything found out it actually was pretty difficult to deal with Nintendo at that time.
Yeah, Nintendo didn't want to give them like a development kit to work like on their first game. I mean,
Yeah,
not first game, but like their second game, something like that.
or it was along those lines, because they got the kit for the first game, which was Rocket, but then they realized that the PlayStation 2 had the more evolved components and everything like that, because at that time the PlayStation 2 was out and the Nintendo 64 was still old. You could do a lot more with the PlayStation 2, so they kind of went up. And the thing about Sucker Punch in the beginning is they funded all that themselves. Like, they didn't have anybody to help them. It was just them using their own money.
Yeah,
And they were all from Microsoft too.
yeah, that's right. That is one thing that no like publisher wanted to like publish any of their games. I mean, they just didn't
They
really have any high hopes for them,
because
really.
I mean, they granted they had offers, but the one thing was they wanted control. and like they
Right.
didn't want to, basically produce the Rocket game, but that was like that was what they wanted to do. That was their ideas, and so they funded everything themselves. And after they got some pretty good success with Rocket, it was, I think I heard that it was like one of the top 18. It was in the top 20, and it was number 18 on the list of Nintendo 64 games. So I mean, people played that game.
Yeah, yeah, it was up there in the top N64 games of all time. So that kind of
Kind of,
propelled them
yeah,
forward
yeah. I
to
was gonna say skyrocketed it. Get it,
right.
Rocket.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, it propelled them forward. It rocketed them forward
Into
to
Sly Cooper.
yeah, into Sly Cooper, which is I never really played that game. I remember it, but I never owned it.
I I think I rented it. So I mean, granted, I had a PlayStation and everything at my dad's house, so I would rent those games there. And you know what? I might have had one of the Sly Cooper original three games, but I remember renting most of them. But that game, for if you ever go back and look at it, it actually had some pretty good game dynamics. Like, being able to kind of like jump around, bounce on a rope, fight certain,
Different
characters.
enemy types.
Yeah, like it was kind of ahead of its time. And when you kind of look back on it, it still looks really good on the PlayStation 2. Like, it's just one of those games that kind of stands the test of time in a weird way.
Yeah, and the art design of it, and I think that's what kind of makes Sucker Punch stick out of everyone is the art design kind of evolves with every new game, and with Sly Cooper, it had that very like cartoonish
Yeah.
comic book type esque art, like even the cutscenes, and this carried on to Infamous because even the cutscenes from Sly Cooper, because if you look them up, it's almost kind of like reading a comic book. Like it's very 2D still. Like there's
Yeah, because like
some
when you're going
animatics
through the
where it kind of
transitions.
yeah it kind of moves a little bit, but it's almost kind of like looking at a comic book, and then the art style is very cartoonish, very animated.
And that's what honestly appealed to a lot of kids. And the way they developed that game, all the game mechanics and everything, wound up kind of helping them transition into the PlayStation 3 era of when Infamous came about. Kind of like how Oscar said, it was always part of bundles and stuff. But one kind of fun fact I want to throw out there is, so Sucker Punch produced the first three games in the Sly Cooper series, and there's a fourth one that I'd never heard of.
No,
and
no,
and
not
surprise,
until we looked it up.
yeah, and you can kind of tell that it didn't look the same. The cartoony look was kind of, I don't know, it was almost kind of like downplayed in a weird way. It's like you can tell Sucker Punch did not touch that game.
Yeah, it was made by someone else who, every original has its cheap copy, and that was the cheap copy of Sly Cooper.
Yeah, and and it kind of showed. But like I said, the game of Sly Cooper, basically with what they put into that game over the years of those three games coming out, it helped lay the groundwork for the new console in the PS3, which wound up producing Infamous. And
Infamous 2, Second
yeah,
Son. Yeah.
like, because Second Son was the one that came out for the PlayStation 4. That was one of their kind of the PlayStation 4's like flagship games is what it was, because it was
Yeah.
one of the very first games I had for my PS4.
And it's cool because if for those of you that don't know, or for those of you that have played the recent game that came out last year, Ghost of Tsushima, Sucker Punch made that game. So they started off the brand new generation with the PlayStation 4 with Infamous Second Son, and then they closed it off with Ghost of Tsushima, and both games were, I mean, top tier,
Yeah,
on top of the list, like
they
must plays for
you
the PlayStation.
basically ushered in fans to come see the PS4, and then ushered fans to see what was next. Because Ghost of Tsushima right now is getting an upgrade to the PS5. We're getting a director's cut. But before we kind of go on that, we'll kind of rewind this back to Infamous. So Infamous was kind of in those lines, still part of the kind of like the early sessions of superhero video games and everything, but this one was kind of like a fresh new idea. It wasn't Batman, it wasn't Spider-Man, it wasn't like a Marvel or DC character. This was like a created character from Sucker Punch themselves. And for those who haven't played the Infamous series, I would recommend playing it. It's one of those games that you have to experience, especially if you're into the superhero genre and um
It's an
making
open world game.
choices.
Yeah, it's an open world game. The it does have a karma system where you get to pick like whether
Being
you want to,
bad or good, and
yeah, you want to go the good route or the bad route. Which the karma system could use some work. I mean, some of the choices are like just deliberately like black and white. Like you want
yeah,
to kill someone or you
yeah.
want to spare someone's life.
Do you want to
It's
be the good guy or do you want to be the devil?
right. Like there's no gray area to where it's like, oh man, like my choices are definitely gonna
This is
like come back and bite me in the butt.
seeing me, like I like being the good guy, so I was like, it's all right. I'm just gonna be the good guy all the way till the end, and like kind of like a spoiler alert for anybody who wants to
Well,
play
yeah,
the first
yeah.
game.
This game came out in 2009. Like it's one of those things.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
so like at the end of the first one, the actual true ending is the good ending. So I mean that segues you into Infamous 2, which I the one thing that I love about Sucker Punch is they listen to their fans. And a good example of that was Infamous 2, because they were, granted, you still have the same main character from the first game, and they were gonna change his look. So in the first game, he was bald, had a yellow jumpsuit kind of, you know, thing, if you can call it a jumpsuit.
It was like a little tracksuit type
Yeah.
thing.
And then they gave him hair, like a white and black t-shirt and jeans. And when they played the first trailer, fans were pissed. And I was one of them. I was a kid and I was like, why are you messing with a cool main character that I grew to love in the first game? So why are you doing that? And guess what? They listened to their fans. They changed him back to looking, physically looking the same as the first game. But I mean, he had a different outfit and everything. And I was fine with that. Game ends very well, main character dies a hero if you choose that route.
Yeah, if you choose that route. I actually heard that. I think the second one, the canon was going to be the bad ending, like the evil ending. Like if you decide to be evil,
to lead
but then,
to the second one, to
yeah,
where they fight each
to
other.
lead to
Second Son.
infamous, yeah, Second Son. But apparently, like looking at the statistics of what route players took, I think about like 89% of players decided to go the good route.
Yeah.
So apparently, Sucker Punch had to change the story into Second Son to where it was canon with the good ending.
Yeah, where Cole died and he left like a legacy that he saved everybody, but surprisingly, so that the people who develop powers in the game, they're called conduits. So in the new game, the newish game of Second Son, I mean, conduits are still a thing, and the main character winds up developing powers where he can absorb other people's powers and keep them. But Second Son, kind of like Oscar said, it was the flagship game that started with the PS4, and then we're going to segue now into Ghost of Tsushima, which was basically the end of an era for the PS4. I mean, we've had the PS4 for several years, and it's just kind of like how consoles go is, we have them as long as the technology will allow them to be upgraded until, we need a new, faster, more in-depth console to keep up with the times. And, Sucker Punch did a good job with ending it on a good note.
Yeah, they did. They absolutely did. It's crazy to think that so it's crazy to think that this company went from back in the 1990s. I was gonna say back in the 1964 days, but I was gonna say like
The
1990s
days.
and the Nintendo 64 days. Yeah, so if you look back at the N64 days, where they were a company where nobody like wanted to take them seriously, to now they are nothing but Sony exclusive. They make some of they've made like a big flagship PlayStation games. It is very like pretty interesting to see that.
Yeah, and like, because one of the things that we we realized with that is, so after the infamous franchise, Sony wound up buying them out. So they bought Sucker Punch Productions. So now Sucker Punch actually produces just strictly for Sony. And so when Ghost of Tsushima came out, it's a PlayStation exclusive. You have to have a PlayStation in order to play it. So, they took what was it, 6 years to make this game of Ghost, and it shows so well. You can tell that they put their blood, sweat, and tears into that, game because of the detail, the history,
And even the art style. I mean, going back to the art style, they really do care about how the game is gonna look, not just graphic wise, but just the environment, the open world, making it like blend in. Like the palette of colors that they use is actually, I mean, it's beautiful. It's more, I would say, it's one of the most beautiful games artistically. Like if you don't know what to do in the game, you're just running around. I mean,
you
man,
can spend
yeah,
hours
it's
just looking
sightseeing.
around and fighting random
Right?
people, but it was just it. It's like Oscar said. It's beautiful. It looks like you're playing like an old samurai movie, and there's different modes to where
Oh yeah, well it was. I mean,
playing
it was based off in
Japanese
some of
and
those.
those Kurosawa
Yeah,
films, and
those old samurai Kurosawa films.
like you can play it in black and white. You can play it like a Kurosawa film. You can listen to it in English and listen to it in Japanese.
Yeah,
It's just they put so much into it, and they did the research too on the island of Tsushima. One thing I give them credit for, just kind of in the day and age that we live in, is they made sure there was no historical figures in that game because they didn't want to upset anybody, but they still kept it historically accurate for that time period.
yeah, where the Mongols set out an invasion on Japan, and the first island that they came out to was the island
Tsushima.
of Tsushima. Yeah, which then for the people that know about the Mongol invasion on Japan, they later moved on to the island of Iki, which was close to the mainland of Japan, and we're actually getting that expansion in the director's cut,
Yes.
which is
Which
it's really cool.
it's
Like
gonna
I'm
be
excited to see that.
It's awesome. Like, it's just one of those things that when I played that game and I finished it, I never thought we were going to get DLC for this game. But granted, I didn't really care because I enjoyed that game. I've played several playthroughs through it. And one of the things that was super cool after the fact, so a lot of fans absolutely love this game. It's just, it spoke to a lot of fans. And what was crazy for a small team of what Sucker Punch Productions is, wound up beating The Last of Us Part 2, which was Naughty Dog's like really awesome franchise that they ruined completely in my opinion. And they even beat out Insomniac's Spider-Man Miles Morales DLC that they added to their flagship game at this point in time. But this company wound up creating a game that people loved. The island of Tsushima loved how historically accurate it was.
The developers became ambassadors to the island, which is really cool. Like you don't hear that. I mean, how many games are set in certain places of the world and you don't hear them like, oh yeah, y'all guys are ambassadors to this place because of how well y'all depicted.
You did such a good job that you became ambassadors for an island.
Yeah, like
that you created this content for.
Yeah, like how many games are set like in New York City and you don't hear that? Like, hey, you're an ambassador to the city of New York. Like, here are the city keys.
Oh, thanks. Like being in I created Grand Theft Auto for Los Angeles, and now I'm an ambassador for Los Angeles. Like,
which I mean, I don't even think that's a real thing.
No,
we're
just making stuff up. You can't be ambassadors of cities. You can be mayors of cities,
right?
I guess that would kind of be an equivalent, but no, it's like Oscar said. I've never heard of a game being developed for something historically accurate, and at the end, the island itself is like, you know what, y'all can be ambassadors for us because y'all did a good job, and like they did their research. Every single piece of sword skill or any weaponry, they did research on.
Used at that time.
They made sure that they wanted to make it historically accurate to the point that there could be no, naysayers, you know what I'm saying? But it was just an amazing game, and if anybody out there hasn't played it, I recommend playing it. So that way you can, see what we're talking about and also get to play the director's cut.
Yeah, I mean, it's I hope it lives up, I guess, to our expectations, because I mean the first game was, well, I mean the base game is amazing, so I'm
Oh
really
yeah.
looking forward to the DLC of Iki Island. But um, the one thing I wanted to touch up on, and I kind of already talked about this, but talking about the artwork, and one thing that separates Sucker Punch from a lot of other gaming studios is they kind of, um, if you look at the transition from Sly Cooper to like Infamous, they kind of kept that same. They didn't keep the same art style in the game, but they did keep kind of like the same comic book transitions of cutscenes, very 2D. Uh, the animation, what was it called? Like the animatic, I think it's what it's called, where you get like 2D figures and they kind of slightly move, kind of
Oh,
like in a,
basically the transitions in the
yeah.
story.
There's a name for it, but they kind of kept that from the Sly Cooper series, the very comic book esque
That
like
even went into
type.
Second Son, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah,
But
did they?
they didn't do that though in Ghost of Tsushima. I think that's
No,
where it
no, no.
ended.
Yeah, no, they didn't. But yeah, it's just that transition's pretty cool, and it's crazy to look at how they went from a very like cartoonish kid type game to like a very dark like
Very serious,
yeah,
like.
I mean very
But
dark and gloom
but if you think
game.
about it, is they know who their fans are. Granted, we grew up in that era. Now that we're basically adults and can play these older games now, without having to go, sneaking around or have somebody buy it for us when you're not 17 yet to play those mature games.
Well, not even I like what you said about they understand their fans, because I think that is
That is
it,
key.
yeah, that is key. And I think that is the reason why they've become successful, is because if you look at last year, when The Last of Us 2 came out, uh, for those of you that have played The Last of Us probably know what I'm talking about, and if you haven't, I recommend you play it.
And we
It is,
respect everybody's opinion
yeah,
on this.
the first Last of Us that Naughty Dog came out with was phenomenal. I mean, Naughty Dog is known for like the Uncharted games. What other games? I don't know
Yeah,
what other
it was
games Naughty
Uncharted
Dog
because
has
Uncharted
done.
was a flagship franchise for them, and then when they made The Last of Us, the first one, that game was
Yes, like
amazing.
I consider it to this day like one of my top, if not probably the top, zombie post-apocalyptic game. Like the first
Yeah,
one.
and
I loved it. And when they were going to come up with the second one, I mean, everyone was excited. I was,
everybody was ready to pre-order
oh my
it. It
gosh,
was just
yes.
it. That was the game.
Yes.
And then it felt bad though for Sucker Punch and Insomniac because they were going to be competing with this flagship
Yeah,
franchise. Like
they were going to,
this was the basically the shit. Like
yeah, they were going to be competing with a game that they knew, hey man, like this game's going to take us out. Like we
if
just
we're
got to
not
be ready.
careful, if we're not careful, our sales could tank.
Yeah, exactly. And the weird thing is, if you look what happened with Naughty Dog, and I mean this happens a lot with in entertainment. This has been happening a lot, and I don't know why. But Naughty Dog decided to go the route of blaming the fans for the non,
For it failing.
yeah, for failing. So the game Last of Us 2 actually got leaked by someone in the company, supposedly.
Yeah.
Who knows?
A hero.
Yeah, a hero. Yeah, exactly, a hero. A hero leaked the game, and basically the game was like a big middle finger to all the fans who loved the first game, because they they killed off um
One of the
the
main
main, yeah,
characters.
the main character early in the game. And there's nothing wrong with killing off main characters, but the way they did it,
It was a slap in the face to the
it
original
was.
fans because it was almost so kind of building off of what Oscar said. They fired the original development team that made the first game great, and the ones who wound up staying and found out what direction they were going to go in, they left. They didn't want to be a part of it. Their ideas weren't being heard because this apparently wasn't the original story for the second one. So when they changed the route, the new director, whoever, Neil Druckmann, whatever the hell he is, basically gained control and decided he wanted to do his own thing. When it failed, he wound up blaming the fans. And so, and honestly, it was kind of a godsend.
Yeah, well, when it leaked, nobody liked the direction that the game was going to take. And when everyone was like, nope, I'm not pre-ordering it, or people were already canceling their pre-orders, Naughty Dog went out of their way, like their PR division went out of their way to basically attack the fans and say, oh, y'all guys are istanisms and phobes for not agreeing with the direction that we're taking. And it showed. I mean, when the game launched, nobody liked
bought it. And whoever bought it, they returned it.
Yeah, like
nobody wanted it.
If you're trying to get into video games, like, let me tell you, you can play the first Last of Us, and it is amazing. It's beautiful. It'll blow you away. I mean, it did for me. And then I didn't play the second one. Yeah, I saw reviews and I saw gameplay. Yeah,
I didn't want to buy it. I watched gameplay and just
by watching the gameplay, I saw that
I
the
didn't like the
second one,
story.
Yeah, it was disrespectful.
Yeah, and
to the fans,
which
like to the gaming community, it was very disrespectful. They didn't listen to the fans and everything that the fans said. Like, look, like, why are you doing this? Like, we don't like that you're taking this direction. Naughty Dog basically said, oh, like,
here's the middle finger, get over it. This is our company. This is what I'm going to do. But the best part about it is you can do whatever you want to do, but the people who pay you to make those games, they're going to be in control, basically. Yeah, I mean,
because as an artist, as an artist, you can make the art that you want to make, but if
it doesn't appeal to anybody, then you're not going to make any money.
Yeah, you're not going to sell it.
That was kind of like a godsend though for like Sucker Punch and Insomniac, because when that happened and Ghost of Tsushima came out and everybody was just like, holy crap, this is like a breath of fresh air. The game is similar to the Assassin's Creed franchise, what it used to be before they changed all the gameplay mechanics, and then being historically accurate. A lot of people love that.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly one of the things that I saw, like, when the game first released, like, one of the first reviews that I saw was like, man, this is what I wish Assassin's Creed would do.
Would have been like.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people have always wanted Assassin's Creed to go to, like, feudal Japan.
But now they can't.
Or ancient China. yeah, now they can't, because they're going to be compared to...
And, like, the mechanics that they did originally with the Assassin's Creed games is how Ghost of Tsushima is, and I bet a lot of the original Assassin's Creed fans were probably like, yes, finally, you can be a one-man wrecking crew again, or you can be stealthy, or you can be both. That's what made the original Assassin's Creed game so fun, because it had a little bit of everything for everybody, and that's what Ghost brought to basically back on the table.
Yeah, and it was it felt like a complete game. I mean, as gamers, you look at some recent Assassin's Creed games, and I mean, you're talking about Ubisoft making you pay for, like, time savers and making you pay all these microtransactions for certain stuff, where that's all the game.
It's just like a lot of different franchises now. Is just here's this.
Yeah,
you can pay for this. Oh, we just rushed out. We still had 6 months to finish.
Yeah, here's day one patch, and there's gonna be another update in like 3 months.
All those.
And I just felt like Ghost of Tsushima wasn't that complete. It felt complete, which is very rare in the modern gaming industry. And it's awesome to see that even though Naughty Dog has the money to pay out game committees and the boards to win awards and stuff like that, like Game of the Year and whatnot, the fans voted for Ghost of Tsushima for the Game of the Year, and it won. Like, all the fans know which one's the better game.
and which one is supposed to be game of the year.
Yeah.
And, kudos to Sucker Punch. And, hopefully, you know, this might reach out to you. But I would just want to say, from fans like us, we appreciate the time and the effort and the love that you give and how you listen to your fans and produce content that is just all around amazing.
Yeah, it is. And I, I mean, there's a lot of people that work, in these projects, but one of the directors behind um, their successful games since Infamous, his name is Nate Fox, and I look forward to seeing any of the artwork that he comes up with, in the
Or
future.
any of the ideas and stories and stuff. Everything has been great.
Yeah. So what? So that's just, I guess, a little.
Kind of a little history
Yeah,
overview or in
a
our
little
opinion.
history, everything in our opinion of Sucker Punch. What do you think is gonna? What do you want to see? I guess I should say, as the next up and coming
Sucker Punch like production.
game. Yeah, like do you want it to continue like with the Ghost of Tsushima franchise? Like, do you want them to make like a game 2, a game 3, or do you want them to come up with like a brand new IP?
I don't know. In a weird way, I would love them to make a sequel to Second Son, Infamous Second Son, because I feel like if they, and you know what, they might have two separate teams right now already working on one for that and another sequel to Ghost of Tsushima. So, I mean, whatever they produce, I will be excited about. I will be looking forward to it.
Did you ever play the DLC to Second Son? I know they came up with the DLC.
Yes, I believe it's First Light.
Something like that.
Yeah, it was a good game. A lot of people didn't like it because it just felt like a little continuation. But me, I personally loved the story, so I loved to see. I believe her name is Fletch. Fletch.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And it was her story and her background leading up to Second Son. But no, what about you? What do you want for the future?
To be honest, a new IP. I mean, as much as I liked Ghost of Tsushima, I think it's one of those, uh, one and done. I mean, I liked it. It was historically accurate. We know that the Mongols eventually just don't. They just give up on their invasion of Japan. So it's like, yeah, like you did that part. It's nice.
Keep it going.
Yeah, I want to see what else that they can come up with.
I agree. But,
yeah.
I just want to say, everybody who's listening, wherever you're listening at, please, kind of follow us and keep up. And
yeah, so, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
all right, we're going to cue that music.
All right.